Dlaczego musimy być takie samodzielne? Dobrze, dziękuję bardzo w takim razie za informację. Dobra, chyba jednak nie to. Nie, przepraszamy bardzo, same jesteśmy pogubione najwyraźniej. Okay, Mark, just a short hi again, although we were talking to you before, but let me switch to Polish because the Polish will be the main language in which we'll be asking you questions in respect of our audience, but we understand that you have interpretation channel up and running, and I'm switching to Polish now. Don't feel offended, please. Dzień dobry, serdecznie Państwa wszystkich witamy. Króciutko tylko techniczne sprawy. Tutaj nasi kochani koledzy Marcin i Sebastian wspomagają Państwa, jeżeli są jakiekolwiek problemy jeszcze z tym, żeby mieć dostęp do kanału tłumaczeniowego, ale mam nadzieję, że u wszystkich będzie to działało. Na samym dole na pasku powinniście Państwo widzieć taką ikonkę z globem, tam jest napisane Interpretation. Jeżeli chcecie słuchać tłumaczenia symultanicznego, to proszę wybrać kanał Polish. W trakcie, jeżeli będą się nasuwały Państwu jakieś pytania, prosimy zadawać je z kolei w ikonce Q&A. Troszeczkę inaczej niż na naszych poprzednich webinariach, gdzie mieliśmy zawsze 2 przerwy, podczas których mogliście Państwo głosować na najciekawsze pytania, ponieważ dzisiaj będziemy biec jakby całością przez 1,5 godziny, nie będzie czasu na oddawanie tych głosów, nie chcemy zabierać Państwa uwagi od tego, co będzie mówił Marc, żebyście oddawali głosy na pytania, więc pozwolimy sobie wybrać pytania w części Q&A, która nastąpi mniej więcej za godzinę. A teraz zaczniemy już rozmowę z Markiem.
Tak. Mogłybyśmy, drodzy Państwo, przedstawiać cały dorobek naukowy naszego prelegenta, ale wydaje nam się, że powody, dla których go zaprosiłyśmy do dzisiejszej rozmowy, najlepiej odda krótki cytat z jego książki. Dlaczego powinniśmy rozszerzać ślad współczucia i przejmować się manifestem zwierząt? Dlaczego powinniśmy dbać o zwierzęta i traktować je lepiej? Ponieważ są mądre, ponieważ czują, ponieważ są, ponieważ im zależy, ponieważ nie musimy ich używać ani nadużywać, ponieważ bylibyśmy zdrowsi, gdybyśmy ich nie jedli, ponieważ są naszymi kumplami albo doskonałymi towarzyszami, ponieważ jesteśmy tak potężni, ponieważ wszyscy musimy dbać o siebie nawzajem, ponieważ mają dobry wpływ na nasze dusze, a my na ich, ponieważ jesteśmy gatunkiem empatycznym, ponieważ są niewinne, ponieważ to one czynią nas ludźmi, ponieważ przynoszą nam radość, ponieważ wszyscy jesteśmy zwierzętami, ponieważ nie chcemy cichych wiosen, ponieważ jesteśmy ich głosem, ponieważ współczucie rodzi współczucie, ponieważ dbając o zwierzęta, dbamy o siebie, ponieważ zwierzęta nie szkodzą ziemi, robią to ludzie.
Myślimy, że to jest najpiękniejsze przedstawienie Marka. Jeśli chodzi o biografię, czytali Państwo ją w naszym ogłoszeniu. Mark, czy chciałbyś jakoś skomentować ten początek?
Oh, I'm flattered and honored and thank everybody for being here. That was excellent. I'm going to ask you to send that to me on email.
Zrobimy to. Dobrze, to przejdziemy do pytania?
Tak, to przechodzimy w takim razie do pierwszego naszego pytania. Kiedy Kasia i ja pracujemy z psami, szczególną uwagę poświęcamy ich emocjom. Kiedy jednak mówimy o tych emocjach psim opiekunom, zdarza się, wciąż jeszcze spotykamy się ze zdziwieniem ze strony ludzi. Jakich, Mark, argumentów używasz ty, wyjaśniając ludziom te kwestie? Czyli krótko mówiąc, skąd wiemy, że zwierzęta, w tym również psy, mają emocje?
Well, there's a number of different ways. I mean, the first way, of course, is just to watch them and watch how their behavior changes from one situation to another. They're assessing what's going on and trying to do the appropriate thing to respond with the correct behavior for the context in which they're encountering other dogs. So I think just observation is very, very important. Then, of course, people have been doing brain scans using the magnetic resonance imaging, the fMRIs, showing that in a lot of situations, the same parts of the dog brain light up as a human brain when they are experiencing certain emotions. And that's not surprising, of course, because we're all mammals and we share the same basic brain structure and the same neurochemicals. And then biologically, if we have or experience certain emotions, then there's no reason why other animals, maybe especially mammals for now, experience emotions. So the question I always want to know is why emotions have evolved, not if they have evolved. And when you ask the question if they've evolved, you're already acknowledging and you're paying attention to the fact that dogs and other animals have extremely rich and complex emotional lives.
Mark, to o ile część osób, część opiekunów faktycznie jest w stanie przyjąć i przyznać, że psiaki czują takie emocje jak strach, radość, tęsknotę, o tyle jakieś schody zaczynają się wtedy, kiedy mówimy o emocjach złożonych i to zarówno po stronie opiekunów psów, jak i psich specjalistów. Ostatnio zauważyłam taką dyskusję na jakimś forum behawiorystów, gdzie ktoś pytał, czy wśród kocich behawiorystów również nie jest pożądane, żeby mówić o tym, że koty są zazdrosne, ale raczej mówi się, że one bronią zasobów, bo tak właśnie jest wskazane wśród psich behawiorystów. Zauważam również, że nie można, na przykład, że zwraca mi się uwagę, że psy nie cierpią na depresję, tylko raczej na wyuczoną bezradność. Czyli widzimy, że ludzie mają ten problem ze złożonymi emocjami. Więc jak to jest z tą zazdrością, z tą depresją i ze złożonymi emocjami u zwierząt i u psów?
Oh, yeah. I mean, of course they do. I mean, the reason that they're behaving in a certain way, like resource guarding, is because they feel something. You know, they don't feel resource guarding. They may feel jealousy. They may feel that they need to defend food or another resource. So all these fancy terms that people come up with are really explanations of what a dog or a cat, cats have very rich emotional lives. It's an expression of what they are feeling. And, you know, we can say the same about humans. You know, we can say that we're resource guarding something because we want to defend it, or we're going to go get something that another individual has because we're jealous that they have it. I mean, the science shows really clearly that these animals aren't just automatons. They're not stimulus response machines. They have feelings that guide their behavior and stimulate certain other behavior patterns. And any other explanation is just ridiculously wrong. And it's wrong because it's anti-science. It's anti what we know about the rich and deep and complex emotions of dogs.
O jakich badaniach naukowych, Mark, mówisz? Czy mógłbyś jakby zgłębić temat, jeśli chodzi o te badania naukowe? Czy chodzi o badania głównie neurobiologiczne, czy chodzi o obserwacje zwierząt w terenie? Na co tutaj najlepiej się powoływać?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think we should be quoting all that we know. So as an ethologist, I find watching animals and the data that you collect from observing animals, including dogs, is extremely important. And the problem is that a lot of people who write about the emotional lives of animals have never really watched them. So a lot of research on dogs comes from a handful of studies on a limited number of dogs in captivity. The research might be really good, but when I read claims that dogs don't feel jealousy or don't do something, I mean, I spend hours at dog parks and people laugh at me because that's where I kind of earn my living. And you see these things all the time. I mean, I did years of field work on coyotes. I've studied wolves in the wild, including, and birds in Antarctica. And when you watch these animals, you really learn about who they are and what they're feeling and what they know. So when people tell me that they had 10 dogs in a laboratory and they set up a complicated situation and the dogs don't do something, and then they conclude that the dogs can't do that, it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know any other way to say it. So if you want to learn about dogs, watch dogs when they're free, when they're not captive to us, when they can make choices about what they want to do. And just because a dog doesn't do something in the laboratory doesn't mean they can't do it or don't know something. I can't think of any other answer, and I really mean it, because when I talk to people who live with dogs, who go to dog parks or let their dogs run free, or people who study free-ranging dogs like I have for many years, you see all these things and you go, well, they may not do something in the confines or the limitations of a laboratory, but my goodness gracious, just go watch them when they can do these things, and they do these things.
Dziękuję bardzo, bardzo satysfakcjonująca dla mnie odpowiedź.
Dla mnie również, oczywiście.
Chciałabym teraz zapytać o...
The other side is that there are people studying brain imaging. And so in one study of jealousy, they set up a situation where a dog would feel jealous seeing another dog get food. And the same brain areas lit up when they saw another dog getting food as would light up in humans when the humans are feeling jealous. And those are really solid, compelling, convincing data. And so if people come to studies and explanations of dog behavior thinking that they're robots, they're just wrong. I mean, who wants to live with a robot? I always say to people, the reason we love living with dogs, or most people do, but some don't, is because they are feeling sentient beings, feeling and sentient animals. And so if you want the company of a robot, you can go buy a pet rock that looks like a dog. But that's not why we live with them. We live with them because we experience the same emotions. And I like to say that the emotions are the social glue that bind us together. And that's the reciprocal, the mutual sharing of feelings is why we like to live with dogs. I mean, I've got stuffed animals all over my house. I really like them and I talk to them sometimes, but they don't really do much back for me. So that's really my answer. The other answer, of course, is that in training, we see the emotions. Dogs don't like being beaten or shocked or negatively punished when we're trying to teach them to do something. So how do you explain that other than they don't like it? They develop fear, they develop aggression, they develop anxiety. But when you try to teach them to live in a human-dominated world in a positive way, they like it and they're better at learning certain things. I mean, you can beat a dog like you can beat a human into learning something, but that's not what we really want to do with dogs or humans or other animals. So we know they have rich and complex emotional lives. And when people say that they don't, I always say, well, how do you know they don't? And they don't know they don't. So they make up these ridiculous excuses for the way in which they mistreat and abuse dogs. And I find it to be absolutely unacceptable and despicable.
To jest bardzo ciekawe, bo nasze obserwacje również są takie, że dużo mniej trzeba tłumaczyć i przekonywać kogokolwiek w kwestii emocji u zwierząt, u zwykłych psychopiekunów. Natomiast te pytania, czy to poddawanie tego w wątpliwość, często jest wysuwane przez naszych, powiedzmy, kolegów profesjonalistów, tak? Jakieś komentarze słyszymy i wiemy, zdajemy sobie sprawę z tego, bo gdzieś tam się to pojawia w literaturze na twój temat, w twoich biografiach, że ty też byłeś pod gradem takich trochę, no nie bójmy się tego słowa, ataków ze strony świata naukowego. I teraz moje pytanie jest, jak ty sobie z tym poradziłeś, bo to chyba nie było łatwe przetrwać w tym takim twardogłowym otoczeniu z takim otwartym sercem po prostu na zwierzaki.
Yes, absolutely. But over the last 10 years, if not 15, things have really changed. And I do not know anyone, I mean, I honestly don't know anyone at all now who would say that dogs and other animals do not experience emotions and feelings. And that's because of the science. It's because of common sense. I mean, to me, it's the dumbest thing people can say, that dogs and other animals don't experience emotions. It's not only anti-scientific, it's just so human-centric, so human-centered. Well, we're the only animals, and we are animals, by the way, we're the only animals who have emotions. Well, of course not. I mean, Charles Darwin put forth this idea called evolutionary continuity. And what he basically meant by that was that if we have something, other animals have it. So the differences are degree, not kind. So this is a really important thing to emphasize, because some people will say, well, dog joy, dog pain, dog grief, dog jealousy, dog guilt isn't the same as humans, so they don't have it. But no one would argue they're the same. I mean, my grief and my happiness may not be the same as yours, but it doesn't mean I have it and you don't, or vice versa. So there's dog joy, dog grief, dog jealousy, dog guilt, dog embarrassment, whatever you want to call it. And then there's human equivalents, but they're not identical. And so I think what happens is people try to force this reductionist, naive, uninformed view of dogs and other animals because it's the easy thing to do. And then it means it opens the door that when you train them, if you don't like what they're doing, you can shock them or you can punish them. But what's ridiculous is that if that works, it's because they're feeling something. So the feelings are there. I mean, I'm not really apologizing, but it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, especially in 2021. It's just ridiculous to say that these animals don't have emotions, so it's okay to mistreat them. Because when they're mistreated, you get them to do something because they become afraid and they avoid certain situations. It's like Cesar Millan. I mean, he can get dogs to do anything because he punishes them. He mistreats them. And the other thing is, and I think it's really important, if you take that point of view, you're not respecting dogs for who they are, and it allows you to treat them indecently. And we owe it to dogs and other animals to treat them decently with compassion, empathy, and respect and kindness. And how many people do you know? I mean, I don't see all the people in the audience, but how many people do you know who say, wow, the better I treat an animal, the better they, quote, behave? Because they don't like feeling subordinated and punished. So, I mean, yeah, I don't have much more to say because I just think that it's dumb and it's unscientific and it's unempathetic and it's non-compassionate to make these claims. And the scientific data support us.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Dziękujemy. Idziemy dalej. Chciałybyśmy kilka też takie pytanie zadać dotyczące wsparcia. Ja dzielę życie z 4 psami. Najstarszy z nich, 17-letni już w tej chwili, jest po poważnym zabiegu i zauważyłam, że zawsze, kiedy czuję się gorzej, 2 moje suczki, zawsze któraś z nich kładzie się blisko jego posłania, rezygnuje tym samym z leżenia na swoim posłaniu, tylko kładzie się na podłodze blisko jego posłania i kiedy tylko on się poruszy albo kiedy wyda jakiś dźwięk, to one natychmiast sprawdzają, co się z nim dzieje. Oczywiście ja czuję, że to jest wyraz współczucia, ale też mam takie poczucie, że to jest po prostu wsparcie, że one próbują go wspierać w tym trudnym procesie rekonwalescencji. I chciałabym się zapytać, co współczesna nauka mówi w zasadzie o wspieraniu psów, o wspieraniu psów przez psy, o wspieraniu ludzi przez psy, czyli nas, opiekunów psów.
Well, that's a really great question. The contemporary science shows that this is a very reasonable way to explain what's happening. For example, dogs evolved from wolves, and there's plenty of observations of wild wolves supporting one another, helping an individual in need, giving them food, protecting them from others who want to harm them, and outside of the, say, mother-infant or parent-infant relationship. So they feel what other animals are feeling. We call it theory of mind. It's really easy to say dogs don't have a theory of mind, but we do, and chimpanzees do. But once again, it's ridiculous to say that. I mean, for example, when dogs are playing with one another, the ongoing play means that if I'm playing with you, I'm reading your behavior, I'm reading your intentions, I'm reading your desires. And the way that dogs honor what I call the golden rules of play by playing fair is they honor that and they know it. They know what you want by exchanging signals like play bows or approach withdraw, or, in basketball, go fake left and then go right. I mean, they know this. And they know it because they're not only reading the behavior, but they're reading your mind. And so these examples of animals supporting one another, you find them all over the animal kingdom. You see it, I mean, I've seen it in penguins in Antarctica, wild penguins, just knowing that an individual isn't feeling well or feeling good or feeling frightened or feeling threatened, and they go help them. Well, of course they do. They're their friends. They're protecting their children. One of the debates in ethology, it's once again, one of the ridiculous debates is, do animals form friendships? I mean, of course they do. And so biologists refer to youngsters as offspring, for example, or they're young. They're their children, just like our children are our children. We don't call them our offspring. And because of this, different emotions and the capacity to read others' emotions, a theory of mind, have evolved. And once again, the more research that's done, the more we support this. But a lot of these questions come from human exceptionalism. We're the only animals who have this or do this or feel this, which is, like I said before, it's anti-science and it's just dumb. I'm sorry. I've had it with people who put this forth. It completely derails future research into who dogs are and what they feel.
Tak, idąc dalej, chciałabym się jeszcze zapytać o empatię, tak? Bardzo, bardzo, bardzo blisko wsparcia, wspierania. Empatia. Obserwujemy, pracując z psami na naszych zajęciach, bardzo często wyrazy ich empatii, kiedy jeden wspiera drugiego, kiedy jeden rozumie drugiego, kiedy rozumie, że ten drugi jest w złym albo w dobrym stanie emocjonalnym, czy tak jak wspomniałeś, kiedy rozumieją wzajemnie swoją intencję zabawy chociażby. I chciałabym się zapytać o to, jak wyglądają badania, jeśli chodzi o mózg psa, o miejsca, które są odpowiedzialne za odczuwanie empatii u psów, bo wiemy, że u ludzi jest to kora przedczołowa, kora oczodołowo-czołowa, kilka jeszcze elementów i nie wiem, czy mógłbyś nam powiedzieć coś na temat tego, jak to wygląda u psów, jak są rozbudowane te strefy mózgu u psów odpowiedzialne za odczuwanie empatii.
Yeah, I don't know of any studies that have actually looked at that, but because dogs are mammals, and because of the study of jealousy that showed the same parts of the brain lit up in dogs as in humans when when the humans were feeling jealous and you infer that the dogs are feeling jealous, I would imagine it would be the same areas of the brain. The dog brains look different from human brains, but it would be the same analogous area. And I hope people study these in non-invasive ways because they can be studied in non-invasive ways. So yeah, I mean, that's all I can really say about this. I think the future of one of the futures of studying dog emotions and of course other animal emotions would be to bring together observations and neuroimaging. I mean, I really think so because observations are data. People used to say, "Oh, you just watch animals." Well, after studying wild coyotes for 5,000 hours, I think we got to know who they are, what they do, when they do it, and how they feel. But once again, it's not a criticism. It's more saying that, people make these claims about rats in the lab. And then you go out and watch wild rats and they do amazing things. So we know that rats will rescue other rats from dangerous situations. They will offer care to rats who are being shocked. There's a wonderful study of rats that shows they will help a colleague, another rat, rather than eat chocolate. And people laugh at that, but the fact of the matter is that shows that empathy and helping these individuals in need is very high on the ladder of their emotions. So I look forward to more neuroimaging studies, where the animals volunteer to partake. The work of Gregory Burns at Emory University in the United States. The dogs that partake in this study do it if they want to. They're not forced into an MRI machine because it's ethically wrong and because you don't want animals to be moving while you're imaging their brain. So that would be the future for me, is you got to get more dog trainers to go watch dogs in the real world. I love when I go to dog parks in Boulder and I see the local trainers there, just hanging out and watching the dogs. Because if all you know are dogs who have problems, it would be like going to a psychologist who doesn't know normal human behavior, but only knows the behavior of humans when they come to see her or him. So that's the future. I like to say it's naturalizing dog training or dog teaching. And once again, it's happening. The easy way out, of course, is just to look at a dog and figure, well, this is the problem and I can fix it. And then, of course, sometimes they don't fix it. The hard problem is, or the harder way to deal with it is go watch free-ranging dogs. Really, go watch. I mean, I know people can't do it, but when I've seen dogs in India and China and in Kenya, you watch these animals, or even in the United States. I had a student study feral dogs. they do all the things that wolves do and other animals do. So we need to expand our horizons and require that people who live with dogs and people who train them, I like to say, are fluent in dogs, are dog literate. That's, I mean, you know, once again, that's all I can really say. It just seems so obvious.
Tak delikatnie odchodząc może od tematu, ale mam takie pytanie, nasunęło mi się, jak mówiłeś o obserwowaniu psów w Chinach, w Indiach, w różnych częściach świata. Czy masz takie obserwacje, że ich kultura w różnych częściach świata jest różna, że one zachowują się jednak troszeczkę inaczej, to znaczy prezentują inną kulturę, tak jak my ludzie, bo my z Kasią takie mamy wrażenie, obserwując psy w różnych miejscach.
Na przykład inaczej zupełnie zachowywał się pies zaadoptowany, przywieziony z Tajlandii. Miał zupełnie inny wachlarz komunikacyjny. I to było dla nas bardzo ciekawe.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do believe that dogs have cultures just like chimpanzees have cultures. I mean, from a biological point of view, the dogs are just adapting to the local situation where they live. So it's not surprising, for example, when I lived in the mountains, that my dogs never had leashes or collars on. They were as happy as could be. And they learned certain patterns of behavior because of my behavior and people in 6 other houses that was spread out all over the world up there. So they were very different from dogs in Boulder, where I live. I'm not going to say it's better or worse, although I can say that the dogs up in the mountains who were free to roam really had great lives. I often used to say, I wish I were you, that I didn't have to go to work and I didn't have to earn a living and I could just do what you do. But yes, I do believe that. And I think we need more studies of that. I mean, the dogs I've seen in Kenya and in India and China, for example, I just didn't have the opportunity to do the detailed observations that I wanted to do, but it wouldn't surprise me that they would differ. But the important thing, I think, is that the communication among the dogs themselves was very similar. They have the same basic behavior patterns. And I think you could easily take a dog from Kenya and put him or her into a group in India or Bali or Thailand or, you know, Italy. There's wonderful free-ranging dog studies going on there. And they would do very well because they all speak dog. Unlike me, if I had to come to Poland and not have an interpreter, I would be able to figure out what was going on by body language, maybe, or context. So dogs do that too. But I think, in a sense, the dog talk, dog communication, but just like a lot of others, is similar worldwide. There might be local dialects, but I don't think so. Not like bird song. I honestly have watched animals in enough areas, watching carnivores in various parts of Kenya and Tanzania, that they would do well with carnivores living in the United States or elsewhere. So, yeah, I think it would be a lovely study for somebody to look at the cultural differences, so what dogs come to expect in different locations and how that influences how they behave. Because I could see a dog in China or Thailand coming to the United States and going to a dog park or hooking up with a pack of free-ranging dogs and having to learn the idiosyncrasies or learning the real nitty-gritty details of how these dogs behave and what's expected of them. Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and it would be a wonderful study. I'd like to do it because I'd like to travel all over and watch these dogs in different cultures.
Liczymy na to w takim razie.
I może będzie znowu jednak.
Maybe.
Może jednak będzie temat na kolejną książkę.
Thank you.
Zobaczymy. Tak. Dobrze, Mark, wracając do tych złożonych emocji u psów.
I'm writing this down. I am, because I think it's a wonderful topic. Thank you.
Wspaniale.
Okay.
My w razie czego podpowiemy, przypomnimy. I mamy jeszcze dla Ciebie kilka innych tematów na książki pewnie.
Okay.
I na badania. Mark, ja chciałam...
Yeah, no, this is great. I'm writing everything down.
Ja chciałam nawiązać do takiej sytuacji, która ostatnio mi się przydarzyła. Na spacerze z psem zostałam zaatakowana przez obcego mężczyznę. Nie był zadowolony z tego, że znalazłam się z moim psem bez smyczy przed jego domem i zaatakował mojego psa. I ja stanęłam w jego obronie, czyli nie doszło do kontaktu fizycznego. Natomiast no, ja zostałam rzucona o ziemię i przyduszona. Mój pies na to nie zareagował, był w takim stanie jakby zamrożenia. Wszystko się skończyło dobrze, nic mi się wielkiego nie stało, pomoc przyszła natychmiast. Natomiast później, jak opowiadałam to niektórym bliskim osobom, to mówili, że mój pies musiał czuć wielką dumę z tego, że stanęłam w jego obronie. Natomiast ja widziałam te jego emocje, one były dla mnie trudne i ja raczej się przejmowałam tym, że on chyba mógł odczuwać coś raczej jako, no albo właśnie zamrożenie i nastąpiła jakaś dysocjacja, że on był jakby nieobecny, albo jeśli czuł, to być może czuł rodzaj porażki, że z kolei on się nie włączył w to. No i takie moje pytanie jest właśnie o te kolejne złożone emocje, jak ty to postrzegasz, odczuwanie w ogóle dumy z siebie, czy z kogoś, czy z sytuacji u psów i również czy one przeżywają porażkę, czy czują porażkę.
Yeah, I'm really not sure. I mean, possibly the dog throws, as I've seen, like in wild animals, when something like this happens among them, because they get scared or they're startled. They just sort of, what their brain is saying, God, this is happening. This is new. I've never seen this before. I don't know what to do. So I really can't say more. Yeah, I think that there's some interesting observations of animals feeling pride. I don't know what a dog is feeling, but we've all seen it when, especially at a dog park, dog grabs a stick and is running around with their head up in the air, showing everybody their stick. I mean, maybe they're proud to have it, or maybe that's a way they're going to get other dogs to chase them and play. So the real answer, the most reliable answer I can give you is, I don't think there's any reason to think dogs can't feel pride. We don't know. So until some people say they can't, we should be very careful in saying we don't know. And can they feel failure? Once again, I don't know. I've partaken in a few lab studies, and from time to time, I'd see a dog, do something, get a food reward, and then the task changes and they can't figure it out. It's not because they're dumb, they just can't figure it out maybe as fast as the researchers want them to. And sometimes, they're responding to all the cues of the humans, including odor, including maybe vocalizations, not only visual signals. So from time to time, I've thought, oh, maybe that animal, that individual feels that they failed, or they didn't get the food reward. They're trying to figure out, why didn't I get it? And if it were a human at a certain age, you'd go, oh, you're not giving me the reward because I didn't do what you wanted me to do, so therefore I'm failing. Once again, I don't think we know that. But I have seen in many observations of dogs at dog parks, free ranging, who are able to do something, that they know that they didn't do something right, so they change their behavior. Could be in play when they self-handicap or do something because they're rejected. It could be when they're trying to engage another animal in play, or they're trying to express a positive emotion like support, that, they kind of just go, wow, I really want to help this person or this dog or person, and I really want to play with them. but I'm failing. I'm not doing what I need to do to get them to do this. So once again, I mean, it's an open question. I mean, what's so exciting, of course, about studying dog behavior and being interested in dog behavior is that I always say the more I know, the more I say I don't know, because I just do not know. But we shouldn't just say they can't, like some people say. I hope that that's a good answer, but in years in the future, we're going to really learn a lot. And I think we're going to learn a lot about what dogs and other animals can do and what they feel. That will surprise some people. It won't surprise me at all. But I think it may surprise some people. I hope it does surprise some people.
Ja tu chciałam jeszcze nawiązać do teorii umysłu, o której wspomniałeś. Wydaje mi się, że między innymi Julian Kamiński próbowała badać to, jeśli chodzi o zwierzęta. I właśnie też myślałam o tym, że nawet może nie tyle właśnie on odczuwał porażkę, ale pytanie, czy miał później, jeżeli traktując to, że go zamroziło, a potem wrócił do siebie. Oczywiście nie chcę, żebyś komentował to wydarzenie, bo nie byłeś jego świadkiem, tylko tak sobie myślę na głos, że zastanawiałam się również, czy on, kiedy dotarło do niego, że przeżyłam coś trudnego, bo na pewno wiedział o tym ze względu na zmianę mojego zapachu, na emocje, które mi towarzyszyły później, i czy mógł myśleć, że mnie zawiódł. No i to właśnie tutaj wracamy do teorii umysłu, że my też obserwując, bo my bardzo dużo mamy za sobą też godzin obserwacji psów w terenie, w takich warunkach, kiedy nie przeszkadzamy im, żeby się komunikowały, i jakoś intuicyjnie i z naszych obserwacji wynika, że one, no dla nas teoria umysłu, nawet jeżeli jeszcze nie jest udowodniona, jeśli chodzi o zwierzęta naukowo, no to zwierzęta nam pokazują, że no po prostu to ma miejsce, bo tak jak mówisz, w zabawie, kiedy się bawią i jeden się samo ogranicza, samo upośledza po to, żeby to najczęściej robi to w momencie, kiedy zaczyna zauważać, że drugi przestaje mieć z tego frajdę, tak? I oczywiście można myśleć, że może po to, żeby ta zabawa trwała, ale może właśnie po to, że on jest taki empatyczny i on musi wiedzieć, co czuje drugie zwierzę. I również zauważamy w naszych takich głównie kontaktach z indywidualnymi opiekunami psów, że wpływ na zachowanie psa mają oczekiwania ludzi. Więc oczekiwania są często rzeczą niewerbalną, a jednak psy, jak ludzie zmienią swoje oczekiwania, uda nam się wpłynąć na ich oczekiwania, zmieniają swoje zachowania. Więc pytanie, czy w tych aspektach poczucia, że kogoś pies zawiódł, albo właśnie jeśli chodzi o czytanie oczekiwań innych istot, czy w tym zakresie masz jakieś przemyślenia albo jakieś badania były robione?
Oh, I think a lot of animals, including dogs, read expectations. I mean, you do a play back, you see it play, Mary sees Jane do a play bow. Mary thinks, or, says, oh, Jane's doing a play bow. She expects me to play with her. So Jane desires to play. So people who say that animals don't have desires, I mean, good Lord, just go watch an animal. But so Jane has a desire, and I do a play bow to you. I desire to play with you, and you somehow in your brain say, oh, Jane wants to play with me and expects me to respond to the play bow. But you could say the same thing about threats. You bare your teeth and you go, oh, there's something going on here that's not good, and I don't want to get involved in it. I think the whole theory of mind, I think studying theory of mind in captivity is going to be very, very difficult to set up those situations, not impossible. But once again, because you can't do that, or the studies that have been done who claim that, say, dogs don't have a theory of mind, are just so limited. You're setting up a completely unnatural situation. So, I mean, from an evolutionary point of view, biological, ethological point of view, you would expect that social animals would evolve theories of mind. it doesn't mean that animals who typically don't live socially don't have the capacity for it, but they may not need to express it, as much. Somebody recently asked me a question like that about animals who live more solitary lives. And the question is, yes, the theory might say that there's a relationship between sociality and theory of mind. And that's reasonable, but it would be totally unreasonable to say that less social animals don't have a theory of mind. They have the same brains. So they haven't maybe experienced the same, or they haven't had the same social experiences. So getting back with, your dog, I mean, I honestly don't know what they were thinking and feeling, but there's no reason to think that they weren't picking up cues from your voice, from your visual, auditory, visual, your response, and olfactory. I mean, dogs have big, very highly evolved, magnificent noses, and so instantaneously they could be responding to what we call composite signals, the vision, the audition, and the olfaction. And they're making some kind of cocktail or smoothie out of all the different senses. And they're going, there's something wrong here. There's something unusual here. What they do with that information, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows, but I think we should leave the door open to saying that it could be confusing, and something that's confusing can make you afraid, can make you anxious. And it might be that, oh my goodness, there's something really new going on here. And I have to do something, but I don't know what to do. I mean, dogs can have indecision just like we can. So I think these examples they're wonderful for illustrating all the different aspects of dog behavior and the dog-human relationship. I really do. It's great, and I hope people will continually tell me about these kinds of situations because it really opens the door to talking about what we know and then speculating on what we don't know.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Mark, przepraszamy na chwilę, musimy tylko ogłosić tutaj dla uczestników pewną ważną rzecz techniczną. Kilka osób nie zalogowało się z imienia i nazwiska i bardzo prosimy, abyście zajrzeli na czat, abyście udostępnili naszej obsłudze technicznej swoje pełne imiona i nazwiska. To jest niezbędne do weryfikacji, czy jesteście rzeczywiście zapisani na ten webinar. Także bardzo poprosimy o spojrzenie na czat i o kontakt z obsługą techniczną.
Dobrze.
Kolejne pytanie, jakie mamy. Nie wiemy, czy w Stanach również może wśród trenerów, behawiorystów pojawia się coś takiego, ale w Polsce niestety spotykamy się u trenerów i behawiorystów z takim przekonaniem, że psom trudno jest rozróżnić kategorię dobra i zła. Jak byś to skomentował?
I'm sorry, it's what?
Że psy nie są w stanie rozróżnić dobra i zła. W kontekście zachowań.
Well, I suppose in a sense I would look at good and bad. I'm almost convinced that humans are the only evil animals. So in terms of good and bad, if that's what the person means, I'm not sure I'm not sure what that means. I mean, is it like good dog, bad dog? I need to know more information. I can't answer it because I would think around the world I don't know if it's a dog trainer. I always think of quote good and bad as being depending on context more than anything. So a dog or a human, I mean, we could talk about ourselves here, might do something that looks bad, but if you look at the context in which they're responding, it would be the correct or quote good thing to do. So I need to know more before I say anything. Yeah.
Chodzi nam właśnie o to, czy psy rozpoznają, my podejrzewamy, że tak, że czy to było właściwe w tym kontekście, właśnie w tym sensie, że mamy czasami poczucie, że one mają właśnie poczucie sprawiedliwości, czyli w rozmowach, w kontaktach, nawet w traktowaniu przez człowieka, nagle zachowują się w taki sposób, jakby mówiły, to nie było fair, czyli w tym sensie one mają jakieś kategorie, ja rozumiem, kiedy zachowujesz się właściwie, a kiedy to, oj, to się wymknęło spod kontroli, to nie było w porządku. Może to trochę rozjaśni.
Yeah, I mean, dogs as individuals, I mean, I always stress that we can't talk about the dog or all dogs, but dogs as individuals develop certain expectations because of the relationships they have with their and other humans, you know, who they see a lot. I mean, the dogs I lived with in the mountains, for example, had certain expectations of me and my neighbors. And when people would visit, for example, or when we would go into town with them, they behaved in the ways that they knew. Through social learning, they learned what was, quote, right or wrong, or if you want to say good and bad. So sure, I think that, I mean, if I'm answering that question correctly, it really depends on context. And dogs can learn that. I mean, all the dogs I lived with in the mountains knew mountain behavior and town behavior, if you will. They had to learn it though. So for example, you know, if I came into town with one of my dogs, they would have to have a collar and a leash on, or a gentle leader or a harness. I mean, they needed some tether or restraint. And they had to learn how to deal with that, because I can't say never, but I can say in many, many years of living with them, when they were around my house, they never had collars or leashes or tethers or harnesses or gentle leaders or whatever you want to call it, you know, on them. They just didn't need them. They knew hand signals. They knew a hand to my right pocket meant food, and they would come home because there were carnivores, predators, mountain lions, cougars, bears, foxes, and coyotes around my house. Never, and I mean not once in decades, did any of the dogs on the mountainside have a bad interaction with any of those animals. And I think that's because the people who lived up there taught them how to respond, and taught them, for example, my dogs, if they were running around, it was almost like clockwork. Every 15 seconds or every minute, they would turn around and look at me. And if I wanted them to come back, I would go like this, put a hand in my pocket, and they knew that they would get food. And I really mean that. So in town, though, I couldn't do that. I mean, number one, there were cars. Number two, there were people who didn't like dogs, and I have to honor the fact that not everybody likes dogs the way all of us like dogs. So they had to learn what was, quote, good, right, or bad, wrong. And that's a sense of ethics. That there's a sense there. I mean, we need to know much more, but when people say dogs don't know right from wrong, of course they do. Why would you train a dog if you didn't want them to know right from wrong? I mean, my goodness. I mean, you'd be out of business if you didn't think that they could differentiate what's right and wrong. And it's also context specific. So the last thing I'll say on this, because I think it's crucial, is that we need to look at every dog as an individual, and we need to look at the context in which that dog is doing something. And then most of the time, it's easy to understand why they're doing what they're doing. It's the same thing I do when I study coyotes or look at wolves or other animals. I need to know why they're doing something in the context in which they're doing it, simply because I can't say it's right or wrong until I know. It's like responding to the dog attacking you. I can't comment on it. I wasn't there. So people write to me and they'll often say something like, can you help me? My dog is doing a certain thing. And I'm going, no, I can't. Number one, I'm not a dog trainer. And number two, I have to see it in person to know what to say.
Dobrze, my jeszcze mamy kilka pytań w zanadrzu, ale wydaje nam się, że ponieważ już się pojawiło kilkanaście pytań od Państwa, zaczniemy w takim razie sobie chwilkę wcześniej sesję Q&A, zobaczymy, jak nam to z czasem się zbierze, bo chcemy, żeby Państwa pytania tutaj się zmieściły. Pozwolimy się na chwilkę zniknąć, bo musimy się zbliżyć do ekranu, nie chcemy przestraszyć Was naszymi twarzami, więc sobie giniemy i czytamy pytania. Które, Aniu?
Pytanie od pani Agnieszki. Jak to jest z poczuciem winy u psów? Czy faktycznie psy mają poczucie winy? Wszędzie można przeczytać czy usłyszeć, że psy nie odczuwają poczucia winy. Z drugiej strony opiekunowie psów często przekonani są, że pewne zachowania ich psów świadczą o tym, że czują się winne, że na przykład coś zrobiły źle.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest questions that we need to deal with in dog behavior. So Dr. Alexandra Horowitz did a study, and all she did with the 12 dogs she studied was showed that we are not good at reading guilt. She never said dogs don't feel guilty. All the popular press picked it up, all the newspapers and some of the worst dog magazines picked it up. And so people said, Alexandra Horowitz showed that dogs don't feel guilt. We don't know if dogs show guilt or not. That's the state of the art right now. And I've written a lot about it, and saying that we just don't know, but they shouldn't be quoting Alexandra's study because she wasn't studying whether dogs feel guilt. So I think what we need in studies of guilt would be, and I agree, I strongly feel that dogs feel guilt and that when the proper studies are done, we will know this. But I would love to see one of the neuroimaging studies set up a situation like they did in jealousy and seeing what happens. I'm not saying it's easy, but it wasn't easy to do the study of jealousy. So it's a great question. It's a great question because, once again, from an evolutionary ethological perspective, there's no reason to think that group living animals don't evolve, that guilt hasn't evolved in them like it has in, humans, for example. So that's all I can say. And I wish that people, when they hear other people say either dogs don't feel guilt and we know that from science, they would say, no, we don't know that from science because the proper studies have never been done.
I pytanie od pani Ewy. Emocje czytamy z zachowania, więc kluczem do zrozumienia emocji jest znajomość etogramu psa. Z drugiej strony istnieje pułapka generalizowania w interpretowaniu motywacji, emocji zwierząt, odwołując się do etogramu, czytania konkretnych zachowań. Na przykład uznawanie play-bow, ukłonu, zawsze jako zaproszenia do zabawy. Jak właściwie wnioskować o emocjach z zachowania? Jak wielka jest tu rola intuicji?
That's a great question. I think intuition plays a big role, but context also plays a big role. So, for example, with the play bow, dogs will do what look like play bows when they're stretching. I mean, there's some theories that that play bows evolved because dogs got up and somebody wanted to play and they got up and they stretched. And it's called the process of ritualization in ethology, where a movement takes on meaning because it is a very clear and unambiguous signal. So I've seen situations in wild coyotes, but also at dog parks, where a dog is lying down, gets up and stretches and does what looks like a play, and other animals come over to play with the dog, and the dog basically shows no interest in playing. So I think if I'm reading Eva's question right, once again, it's a great question because context is important there. And so intuition is very important. And I think we rely on intuition much more than we think we do, or some people, when they look at dog behavior. But in the end, what we need really to do is just have our own intuitions, our own feelings about what might be happening, and watch the animals and see what is happening. So the play bow, there's other, vocalizations. I mean, we don't have a lot of control over the odors, or the dogs don't either, but they may have control over the vocalizations or the visual signals that they send. We just need to look at context. I mean, we just really do, and see whether our intuitions are correct. My feeling from people who really know dogs is that the intuitions are correct a lot, but they're not correct all the time. Somebody once misquoted me as saying that our intuitions are always correct. They're not always correct, but they're correct a lot. But we just need to basically see what's going on. And people don't want to do that. People don't realize that when I studied coyotes, that even after 4,000 hours of a good number of field assistants, we were still learning things. I mean, the day the study ended, we were still learning things about these coyotes. So I think the same is true with dogs. I often will go to a dog park and I'll see a behavior pattern I've never seen before. So it might be rare and not be meaningful, or it might not be all that rare. It might be because I haven't seen the animals in the correct situation of seeing it.
Dobrze, i mamy pytanie od Z-Gen. Czy zastanawiasz się, czy istnieją jakiekolwiek różnice w emocjach i zachowaniu zwierząt u zwierząt, które jako młode były karmione butelką, w porównaniu z tymi, które były karmione mlekiem matki? Wielu ekspertów twierdzi, że zwierzęta karmione butelką mogą być agresywne, zwłaszcza koty.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know that. In this book that Jessica Pierce and I wrote, you'll meet Jessica tomorrow, we talk about parental behavior in, say, comparing parental behavior, maybe maternal behavior, more in dogs who are reared on their own, like free-ranging dogs might be now, or dogs who are reared by humans, bottle-fed, say, for example. And we just don't know. I mean, we don't know. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know of these studies that you just mentioned about comparing, I think you said bottle-fed versus mother-fed. Is that correct? Dogs. So I just don't know. I mean, I really don't. But it's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of studies being done on free-ranging and feral dogs in India, and some of the latest are clearly showing that mothers and fathers can be good parents in the wild. But in a lot of homed dogs, the pups are pulled away from the mother really early, and the mother doesn't have a chance to be a mother. So we don't know really how good a mother a wild animal will be, and we don't know how to compare the behavior of hand-reared versus mother-reared dogs. I think I'm answering your question, but if I'm not, please let me know.
Okay, we have the next one in English. Let me just switch off. Sorry, it switched. From Maria. This has been an immense pleasure to listen to your lecture, Mark. I value every single sentence you said and left with us. Common sense is the key expression I take with. What I wanted to ask about is your experience of a situation while observing animals when went through their behavior. Animals made you feel frightened, or you were firmly asked by them to back off. Can you remember a situation like that?
Yeah, people used to say Bekoff, because that's my last name. Oh yeah, a number of situations. I mean, a lot of situations. I mean, I think I'm pretty good at reading dogs, but I'm not a dog as far as I know. So I make errors in that. And I remember early on, years ago, when I knew some captive wolves, and it was my time to clean this big enclosure where they were living. And so we put some food behind them to get them away from me. And I naively pointed to some food behind a big male wolf. And within a second, he had me pinned against the fence. And I had no idea what to do. And so, that was one. And, every now and again, you go to a dog park or you go where there are free ranging dogs, and you inadvertently, I mean, I don't try to interfere with dogs when they're playing, but I do remember that I got too close to a play group and one dog left the play group and growled at me. I have no idea what she was doing other than maybe saying, hey, we're playing, get out of our territory or get out of our space. So yeah, it does happen. It happens with dogs who I know really well because I only know them as well as I can know them as a human being. I can't know them as if I'm a dog. And one of the things I learned years ago is that dogs can have bad days just like humans. They can have headaches. They may have had a bad dream. They may have had just a bad night of sleep, and they're edgy, and they are very, very sensitive to anything that's going around them. So, yeah, in the field, I once, we were looking at wild coyotes and trying to figure out how many pups a mother had. And the mother was far away, and we knew that we shouldn't interfere with them very much. But we decided that one day we were going to go close to the den to count the number of pups. So I got down on my hands and knees and was looking at the hole in the ground. And a coyote mother ran at me. She nipped me in my behind and took off. And I was lucky that that's all that happened to me. And I never did that again.
Okay.
Mamy pytanie od Ani, kolejne. Czy są jakieś badania na temat, czy psy planują pewne działania z wyprzedzeniem, nawet kilkuminutowym? Czy potrafią z premedytacją oszukiwać? Na przykład, taka sytuacja na spacerze, jeden z moich psów zainicjował zabawę z drugim, a zazwyczaj tego nie robi. Więc spuściłam je ze smyczy, ale zabawa się nie rozkręciła. Nagle pies patrzy na mnie z podejrzanym uśmiechem, potem patrzy na sukę i daje jej sygnał, żeby pobiec w krzaki. Pobiegły, okazało się, że był tam zając, którego pogoniły. Kilka chwil wcześniej przechodziliśmy obok tego miejsca. Psy nie dały po sobie znać, że jest tam zając.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how often it happens, but one of the stories I hear a lot, and I've actually seen it with my own dogs, is the general situation is, so I would feed them, And, sometimes I give them food in a bowl. I used to just give them my human food. They loved burritos, and they loved bagels and they loved peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So sometimes what I would do would be I would put the food on a bench or on the floor, and one dog would eat really fast, finish their meal, and then run to the front door barking when no one was there. And the other dog would run to the front door to go, "Oh, what's going on?" And the other dog would run back and grab their food. So, yeah, they plan in advance. I think that when we do more studies of play, you'll see that certain dogs have certain patterns of playing. And these patterns of playing are planned. And one of the wonderful things, of course, about play is how variable and how flexible it could be. And so, yes, I do think that they make plans and they have expectations based around those plans. And once again, I think we really need to study them. But it's cheating and deceiving, but it's not it's cheating and deceiving, and I think it's fascinating that they do this. But they're mammals once again, and they need to learn. I once saw. I've only seen it once in thousands of hours, but I saw two coyote pups playing, and one had a stick, and the other coyote pup turned around and just ran away and stopped and was looking around. I have no idea what they were looking at. And the other coyote dropped the stick, joined them, and the other coyote went back to get the stick. So yeah, I think they do these. I'm sure they do these things more often, but you're not in the field. Of course, you're not privy. You don't have the privilege of seeing it. But I've seen situations like that at dog parks where somebody leaves. They're playing tug of war and they drop the rope, and another animal does something so that they attract the attention of the dog who had the rope, and then they go get the rope, and then they run around, if you will, with pride. I've got the rope and I want to play tug of war. So yeah, the social dynamics that occur in these groups of dogs are fascinating. We just, in English you would say we are just at the tip of the iceberg. We don't know much at all about what else they do or what's going on in their heads and in their hearts, because what happens in their heads and hearts is very closely related.
Mamy kolejne pytanie właśnie nawiązujące do ostatniego zdania od Pauliny. Czy psy rozmyślają, wspominają, tak po prostu, leżąc sobie na posłaniu, tak jak człowiek na kanapie, myślą o różnych sytuacjach, wspomnieniach, planach, zarówno dotyczących przeszłości, jak i przyszłości? Czy raczej pies myśli tu i teraz, to znaczy widzi patyk, myśli patyk?
Well, so there's a whole lot of myths about dogs, and I'm just going to list a few because living in the present is one of the myths. So people say dogs are unconditional lovers. No, they're not. If you've ever rescued a dog who's been abused, they are very selective in the humans with whom they bond. The other prevailing myth, and I just want to say this, is that humans are dogs' best friends. There's books with those in the title. That is just ridiculous. Dogs aren't humans' best friends. There's dog abuse globally that's horrific. Okay, so those are the two myths. Dogs aren't our best friends. They're not unconditional lovers. The other big myth is that dogs are Zen dogs, that they live in the moment. They don't live in the moment. Just think of all the dogs you know who have different personalities and respond to the same situation in very different ways. So do I think that dogs lying around I'd like to say drinking a beer or having a glass of wine, but we don't do that with the dogs. But do dogs lying around think about other situations? Of course they do. Of course they do. I've seen, once again, think of your own observations of Oh, I remember some of my dogs, you know, because my dogs had really good lives. Like I said, I wish that they would take care of me, that I took care of them. But just get up off of their pillow or their bed or my bed, and then just look around, and they're thinking about something. So once I used to do these experiments. I would call them experiments. They were just really games in the mountains. I would bury food, treats on my land. And sometimes I would vary where the treats would be. And I used to see dogs get up and they would go to the same spot that the treat was in, say, the day before, but there wasn't a treat there because it was exciting for me too. It was enriching their lives. And so, I mean, I could imagine Jethro, one of my dogs, got up and said, I'm hungry. And he goes to the spot where the treat was yesterday, and the treat isn't there. And he's looking around, and then he just goes sniffing around and looking for the other treats. So there's really no reason to think that dogs don't daydream like we do. And I mean, we just haven't done the right studies, or maybe more than anything, people haven't had the time to observe their dogs. I mean, one of the advantages of working at home, even when I taught at university, was I could watch my dogs all the time. And I would, you know, see situations where they would get up from lying down and go do something. One other thing we once did, which was really fun, was a couple of my dogs and their dog friends would like to bury bones in the house. Excuse me. And sorry, it's very dry in Colorado. They would bury a bone in the corner, and I would take the bone, and I would watch them many times get off their pillow or get off the couch or wherever they were sleeping and go to the corner and look for the bone. And the first thing they would do would be like me going to the cupboard, which is bare, looking for candy. They would look, they dig a little, and then they go like this. And they had an expectation that the bone was going to be there. I have a videotape that I lost. And a friend of mine did that, who was rehabilitating wolves, because one of the ways to enrich their lives is he would move the bones and then leave little cues that the wolves could follow. So it's a great question, Anya. I mean, they do have expectations, and they do not live in the present. It's an insult to dogs to think that the past doesn't influence them and they don't have thoughts of the future. I mean, it's just an insult. And in fact, if you look at group living animals, like look at a pack of coyotes, look at a pack of wolves, you know that the past is influencing them and that they have expectations of the future.
Dobrze, kolejne pytanie od Kasi. Często wpadamy w pułapkę zamykania psa w bezpiecznej bańce, szczególnie psów lękliwych czy z trudną historią. Boimy się bardzo, żeby nie doznały smutku, strachu, trudnych sytuacji i trudnych emocji w codziennym życiu. Powoduje to często nadmierną kontrolę, unikanie za wszelką cenę pewnych sytuacji, czyli na przykład minięcia się na ulicy z innym psem. Czy powinniśmy rzeczywiście aż tak bardzo za wszelką cenę chronić naszych przyjaciół, czy jednak pozwolić im doświadczać z naszym wsparciem, tak żeby miały szansę uczyć się, jak sobie z takimi trudnymi sytuacjami radzić, nawet jeśli widzimy, że ich emocje są bardzo silne? Czy wystawianie na trudne sytuacje, ale w bezpiecznych warunkach, i przeżywanie w tych emocji pozwoli psom rzeczywiście sobie z nimi radzić w dłuższej perspektywie, czy jednak pogarsza, czy może pogorszyć ich ogólne samopoczucie, a tym samym zaufanie do nas?
Yeah. So I really believe, number one, it's really very specific to context. I think the human has to read their dog, and in certain situations, the dog's behavior may be so strong that it would be wrong to say, well, you know, you need to be in this situation and resolve the conflict on your own. But I think that's easy to do. I mean, my dogs would sometimes meet other dogs, and immediately they would be afraid, and I would be afraid. And I would just say, the dog is telling me that this situation is going to have a bad ending if I allow it to happen. But I think that one of the things, especially with young dogs, is let them have as many different social experiences as possible, so they learn how to resolve conflicts. And you'll see this in the wild. You'll see animals engage in rough and tumble play, and every now and again it gets to be it escalates into something that could possibly be dangerous to one of them. I mean, in the wild, they have to resolve their own conflicts. Humans don't do it. But oftentimes, a mother will go and interfere in a play bout that looks like it's going to get serious. So there have been studies in rats. I don't know, there's no equivalent studies in dogs, that individuals who learn how to resolve different conflicts early on seem to be more adaptive later in life. And I think the same thing happens in humans. So I think as the human in a situation with dogs or cats or other animals with whom humans live, we need to really read the situation and then make the decision that it's okay if this happens and it gets it gets to be strong, or the animal's feelings are hurt. Because one of the ways you become properly socialized is to have, if you will, quote, good and quote, bad experiences. But we need to be sure that the quote, bad experiences don't injure the individual.
Czyli jak rozumiem, jeśli mamy do czynienia z dorosłym osobnikiem, który przeżywa bardzo silny lęk w jakichś konkretnych sytuacjach, to uważasz, że powinno się go bardzo stopniowo i powoli do tych sytuacji przyzwyczajać, a nie wrzucać od razu w te trudne sytuacje, bo tak jak mówiłeś o zabawie i o tym, że matka, kiedy zabawa staje się zbyt intensywna, matka wkracza i przerywa takie intensywne interakcje między młodymi, między swoimi dziećmi, to rozumiem, że tutaj troszeczkę, jeśli mamy do czynienia z dorosłym psem, my powinniśmy być w tej roli, żeby faktycznie balansować w odpowiedni sposób tym bodźcem, czy tą sytuacją, która jest dla psa za trudna i przerasta jego emocjonalnie.
Yeah, I think the word is balance, and I think the word is balance, and I think the word is, and the situation. How can I say this? The word is balance, and we need to read it. We just really need to read it well. Yeah, I mean, I think the same, if you will, rules of engagement or guidelines would apply to humans. I mean, we all get stressed. Like, I don't mind being stressed a bit. I don't mind being stretched a bit, but I don't want, or I'm not going to allow myself to get in a situation in which going over some boundary, I'll be injured. I mean, it's okay to get your feelings hurt every now and again. We all do. I mean, it's just life. And there's okay in dogs too, because I tend to think of it in the same way we think about humans, that, you become more of a global citizen when you're used to different behavior patterns. So, we can protect ourselves, and we all do protect ourselves to a certain degree. And I mean, and it's not a negative thing, but I don't voluntarily put myself in situations where I'm going to get physically injured or my feelings will be hurt. But, every now and again, it's a matter of being risk averse or being a risk taker. I'm personally somewhat of a risk taker, but there's a level beyond which I'm not going to go. You're going to have different personalities in dogs. Some dogs will be risk averse, some will be more of a risk taker, but we need to read the situation with them as well. I mean, if it's an interaction with another dog, I always feel that my dogs were better at reading what's going on than I am. But still, you just you want to protect your dog. And once again, you see the exact analogous behavior patterns in wild canids, wolves, dogs, jackals, foxes, who I've watched. You see it. They assess a situation, and once again, this gets back to the question about expectations. They assess a situation and they expect that it's either going to be a good one or a bad one. If they think it's a good one, they go into the situation. If they think it's not going to be, that it's going to be a bad one or an injurious one, they decide not to. So I love this example, actually, because it's as good of an example as developing expectations. So, yeah, I mean, my mom used to say, and she was my mom used to say, look, you at some point in life, you're going to have to be able to resolve conflict, or you're going to have to be able to judge what's happening in a situation and make the most appropriate response. Do we always make the most appropriate response? I don't know any human being who does. And I'm sure there's no dog who does. So I always figure, let them go. One example of this, and I think it's really important, is play once again, is nobody's really studied it, but my feeling of watching play for so many years and so many hours is that the larger a group of dog gets, give us, say 6, it could be 8, it could be 5, it could be 9, the more difficult it is sometimes for the dogs to read one another. And sometimes play will stop and the group will disband. And sometimes you'll hear a growl, or you'll see a behavior pattern that could be risky. The worst thing that happens, though, is when a human goes and interferes. That's when an interaction can escalate. But you need to read it. You know, all the studies, well, there's only been 1 or 2 real good studies, but I've spent enough time watching wild animals and dogs, is, you know, the chances of group play escalating into a real fight, not just a growl or a snap, is about 1%. But we could be wrong. So I think that it's best to let these dogs learn how to deal with that situation on their own. And in some cases, we might have to interfere. I mean, once again, it comes down to being dog fluent in dog or dog literate. It really does. And what I love when I go to dog parks is, you know, sometimes I go and I just hang out, and people don't know what I do for a living, but sometimes I do. So I do these little seminars at local dog parks, and it's really fun. And what I love is when people either email me, or the next time I go to a dog park, they'll go, wow, you know, I've been watching Bessie or Harry, or you know, dogs have funky names. And wow, I'm learning so much about them. So now I feel more comfortable letting Bessie get involved in rough and tumble play because I know she can handle it. The reason she can handle it is because Bessie learned how to do it. Her human mother didn't learn, Bessie learned. So I hope that answers the question, because I think across species, individuals have to learn to assess situations and resolve conflicts on their own. They just need to do. So a little anxiety and a little stress is fine. I mean, I don't know anybody who hasn't had their feelings hurt, or hasn't done something and said, I'm sorry, I really shouldn't have done that, but I did it. Same with dogs. And the only way you learn it is by your own experience, or the dog's own experience. This is wonderful.
Dziękujemy bardzo. Dobijamy do końca. Czy jeszcze możemy zadać ostatnie pytanie, Mark, czy już czas cię nagli? Bo nie wiem, jak bardzo masz napięty.
No, I would rather do this all afternoon than what I have to go to. I don't want to go get my second COVID shot. So, no, this is wonderful. Thank you. I mean, thank you for all the participants and the questions, because this is what gives me hope for the future. And I really don't mean it in a light way, but when we really need to pay close attention to what we know and don't know, And once again, while we know a lot, we don't know a lot. So you're all giving me hope for the future that dogs will, and other non-humans and humans, of course, will have better lives. So I have time. I have a few more minutes. Because I can't be late for the shot, because if I don't get the shot today, I won't get it ever. So yeah, ask another question. Yeah, go ahead.
To fantastycznie, może nie będzie takie długie, ale jest również ciekawe, bo nas kiedyś też mocno zaskoczyło, chyba ten temat nas zaskoczył z Anią. Luiza pyta, zdarzyło mi się spotkać osoby, które mówią o byciu trenerem psich emocji. Czy możemy wytrenować emocje u psów? Czy w ogóle w kontekście emocji powinniśmy mówić o trenowaniu?
Well, I think that training and teaching tap into the emotions. I mean, like most of I would say, I mean, I rescued a few dogs who, they were in a bad way. So I wanted to teach them that the world wasn't as bad as the way in which they were reared. So in a sense, I did a lot of things. And so in a sense, by training their behavior, I was training their emotions and vice versa. So it's a really good question, because I'm not quite sure if this is emotions and this is behavior. I see them as intertwined this way. So by doing one, you're doing the other. But we need to do it carefully. So one example was there was a guy at the local dog park a couple of years ago who he rescued some siblings. There was a litter of dogs who was dumped by the side of the road. Some were abused by humans, some weren't. But they all basically had a very similar background. And he rescued them and he began bringing them to the local dog park when they were, a couple months old. And I knew this because I knew of my work with coyotes and watching young wolves, wild animals come out, that at 21 days, they have different personalities. There were shy baby coyotes, more bold baby coyotes. There were some coyotes who were just so obnoxious. You wish them a good life, but you didn't want to be around them or watch them in the wild. So there were two males. So it wasn't a gender difference. There wasn't an age difference. Both had the same parents. And it was amazing to me. Within 1 week, one of these young animals was running around the dog park as if he had been home reared and spoiled like we should spoil all dogs. His brother took 6 months. And although I'd seen similar things, it was really, in my face to see this. So the guy asked me what he should do, and I said, don't force the shy animal, the timid animal, the animal who was really scared all the time. Don't force him to do anything. Let him feel his way around. And in a sense, that was training. It wasn't training in the way we might think of training or teaching, but it was training in the sense that over time, this dog, Joe, I think his name was, felt more confident. He had more control in his life and he could make choices. And that's what we want to do with all the animals, is you want them to feel that even when we ask them to do something, there's a little choice involved in the situation. After 6 months, Joe was like his brother, Charlie. And so that to me was a great example where Charlie, I have no idea what was going on in Charlie's head and heart. 2 weeks, he was a normal dog. Took Joe 6 months. So the reason I'm saying this example is I can't separate the meshing of the emotions and the training the emotions and training the behavior. And I'm open to other suggestions on it, but in some ways, if you have a dog who is living a life of fear and you don't want them to live that fear, then you're training them behaviorally to get rid of the fear. so that they feel comfortable and safe in a certain place. So I hope that makes sense. It's a really important question. And once again, it comes down to people who use aversive training. You can take a human being and teach, and you can have them do anything you want and live in fear and stress for the rest of their lives, but you don't really want to do that. But that's what a lot of training techniques are like. I'm the boss, I'm the leader, and you're going to do what I want you to do no matter how you feel. I mean, those people should go get a pet dog or a pet rock or a robot. So anyway, I can go on and that, but yeah. I have time for one more question. This is great for me. If you're recording this, I hope you'll send it to me because I think there's a book here. No.
Wspaniale, bardzo się cieszymy i mamy może takie właśnie zwieńczające to wszystko i zamykające klamrą. Wspomniałeś Cesara Milana. Niestety za sprawą popularnego programu on również był bardzo popularyzowany tutaj. Nie będziemy wchodzić w teorię dominacji, która jest popularna. Natomiast ja pamiętam, że to był jeden z pierwszych rzeczy, kiedy ty się wypowiedziałeś na temat innego trenera. Pamiętam twój artykuł na ten temat, why Cesar, dlaczego Cezar musiał poddusić Shadow, ale chodzi mi o to, że wiem, że masz również swoje zdanie bardzo, bardzo wyraziste, jeśli chodzi o trenerów psich i być może masz również takie przemyślenia, jaka emocja jest najmniej brana pod uwagę, najmniej uznawana w ogóle przez świat trenerów i że gdyby może moglibyśmy wybrać tą jedną, którą oni by uznali, że psy ją faktycznie odczuwają, czy mogłaby odmienić los psów, które są w rękach tych trenerów?
Well, it's hard to think of one but I'll mention one, and then of course there's the opposite, is that dogs can look, quote, to behave normal and be stressed and fearful and anxiety ridden. I mean, I see these all as related. Chronically, they can get ulcers like people can. And I know this from my work with prisoners. I've been teaching prisoners for many, many years. I mean, I know the stress that they can live under, and I know the stress that dogs can live under and appear normal. So I think it's a great question because I think we just need to be upfront about it. We need to be very open about it and say that dogs can suffer from chronic stress, fear, anxiety, but still appear to behave normally. And some people think, well, they're behaving normally, so they feel good. And the real answer is, no, they don't. They're scared out of their minds. So the flip side of that, and that's why I think it's hard to say one emotion, is that when dogs are living and feeling safe and secure and loved, you've got a great relationship and you've got a happy dog. You do. And so that would be my take. And so, yeah, I do have strong opinions on people who shock dogs to teach them or hit them or hang them or hold them up by a collar or something like that. It shouldn't happen. I mean, I know some, I'm sure you know more, but, we might call them positive force-free dog trainers. I know some around Boulder here who are called in to handle dogs who other trainers couldn't handle. And is it more difficult? Sometimes it is. They don't get a response or a result overnight. But in the long run, by working with these dogs who really do have behavior problems, you've come out with a dog who has a really good life. So you could trade off being nice and being a little patient with saying, oh, the hell with it. I'm just going to do something aversive to this dog. And the reason I use that human analogy is simply because you could get another human being to do a lot of things that they don't want to do out of fear and stress and anxiety, and they get ulcers and they get chronic depression. I think that's what happens to a lot of dogs. So, I always say, look, dogs are sentient, feeling beings whose feelings and existence need to be respected, and they need to be treated decently. And the way you do this is very simple. You just simply treat them. Yeah, I mean, I like to say you treat them as if they're humans, but I know that that doesn't work in all the situations, all possible situations. But once you accept the fact that a dog is a sentient feeling being with a heart, as a sentient feeling being who cares what happens to them and their friends and family, and then you interact with them in that way, you've got a recipe for a very healthy dog and a very healthy human-dog relationship. What more can I say?
Wspaniale.
Dziękujemy pięknie.
Myślę, że to pięknie puentuje nasze dzisiejsze spotkanie. Mamy nadzieję naprawdę, że była to dla Ciebie, Marc, taka sama przyjemność jak dla nas. Wszystkich słuchaczy zachęcamy do czytania Twoich książek, bo jest tam kopalnia inspiracji i wspaniałej, aktualnej, najlepszej i takiej bardzo empatycznej wiedzy o psach. Oczywiście będziemy Cię nękać, żebyś zechciał znowu zagościć u nas. No i co więcej możemy powiedzieć? Serdeczne podziękowania.
Dziękujemy za podzielenie się wiedzą, dziękujemy za podzielenie się doświadczeniem.
Seriously, thank you. This has really been a wonderful session for me, and I hope for your participants. Because it's free flowing, it's okay for the human beings in this to bare their heart, to speak from their heart. And in the end, it'll be a better world for people and dogs and all other animals, but if we do that. And so, I think, I really learned a lot. I learned some new things here, but these stories that people have and the questions they have they are what is really going. They are the future. When people say, "Oh, I know everything," I'm a know-it-all. Those are the people to avoid. So thank you, and thank you to all your participants. And I hope you all stay healthy and happy. And I hope you treat your dogs with the most respect you can, and compassion and empathy and all the other positive emotions. So thank you. I need to go get shot.
Powodzenia.
Dziękujemy, powodzenia życzymy.
Zdrowia i niech nie boli. I niech się potem nie będzie powikłań. Wszystkiego dobrego, Marc. I dziękujemy Państwu za udział. Serdecznie dziękujemy.
Okay.
Do zobaczenia.
Good.